Welcome, friends, to another discussion of the economic reality that surrounds us, a reality that is hidden, mystified, and obscured by the corporate media and the politicians who serve the interests of the employer class. Today, we have to talk about something that is unfolding right now, something that is being presented to you as a bold move for national security, but which is in fact a devastating assault on the working class of North America. I am talking about the decision by Donald Trump to impose a 25% tariff on all vehicles and auto parts coming from Canada. You need to understand what this means, not just in terms of numbers on a spreadsheet, but in terms of the lives of the millions of people who wake up every morning, go to work, and produce the wealth that keeps this society running. What we are seeing here is the anarchy of production that is characteristic of the capitalist system, an anarchy that has now reached a fever pitch. Let us look at the facts as they are. At 6 in the morning, an executive order is signed. With the stroke of a pen, the integrated supply chain of the North American auto industry, a system that has been built up over 60 years of careful negotiation and corporate planning, is thrown into chaos. We are told this is for national security. We are told this is to protect American jobs. But let me be clear with you right now. This is not about protecting you. This is not about the auto worker in Detroit or the assembly line worker in Windsor. This is a theatrical performance of economic nationalism that will result in the immediate suffering of the very people it claims to help. When you slap a 25% tax on cars coming across the border, you are not punishing the government of Canada, you are punishing the American consumer who needs a car to get to work. You are punishing the American worker whose factory depends on parts from Canada to keep running. You are unleashing a chain reaction of destruction that exposes the fragility and the absurdity of a global economic system organized solely for profit. Think about the sheer irrationality of this. We live in an economic system where we are told that the market is efficient, that the market knows best, that the invisible hand will guide us to prosperity. And yet here we have one man acting on behalf of a particular section of the political elite who can wake up one morning and destroy the livelihoods of 500,000 people. What kind of rational system allows for that? What kind of efficient mechanism is it that can be blown apart by a tweet and an executive order? This is not efficiency. This is instability. This is the crisis of capitalism manifesting itself in the trade wars of the 21st century. The order cites Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, claiming that Canadian auto manufacturing threatens U.S. national security. This is an insult to our intelligence. Canada is not an enemy state. Canada is not a strategic adversary. The integration of the U.S. and Canadian auto industries is total. An engine block is cast in Ohio, machined in Ontario, assembled into a vehicle in Michigan, and sold in New York. To claim that this relationship is a threat to national security is to admit that the system itself is broken. It is an admission that American capitalism is so weak, so fragile, so unable to compete on the world stage that it must resort to the blunt instrument of protectionism to survive. And who pays for this protectionism? Do the shareholders of General Motors pay? Do the executives at Ford take a pay cut? No, my friends, you know the answer to that. The cost is passed down. It is always passed down. The $40,000 SUV built in Ontario now costs $50,000. The auto parts that cross the border every single day to keep American factories running now cost 25% more. And what happens when costs go up in a capitalist system? The employer has two choices. he can accept lower profits, or he can squeeze the worker and the consumer. And since the iron law of capitalism is the maximization of profit, we know exactly what they will do. They will raise prices and they will cut jobs. We are already seeing the panic. Dealerships are marking up inventory. Supply chains are freezing. Workers are being told to go home because the parts they need are sitting in a truck at the border waiting for a tariff to be paid. This is the reality of trade wars. They are not fought by generals. They are not fought by politicians. They are fought on the backs of the working class. We have to look at the scale of this disruption. We are talking about 500,000 jobs on the line. These are not just statistics. These are families. These are mortgages. These are children who need to be fed. In the capitalist system, labor is treated as a commodity, just like steel or rubber or glass. When the price of steel goes up, you buy less steel. When the cost of production goes up due to a tariff, you buy less labor. You fire people. You destroy their lives. And you do it without a second thought because the system demands it. The Detroit 3-4 GM and Stellantis have issued a statement calling this a catastrophe. Even the capitalists are panicking because the disruption is so severe that it threatens their bottom line. But do not be fooled into thinking that their interests are your interests. They want the tariffs gone so they can continue to exploit labor across the border without friction. We want the tariffs gone because we understand that trade wars are a game played by the rich with the lives of the poor. The immediate impact is going to be brutal. We are looking at price spikes for popular models, the Ford Edge, the Chrysler Pacifica, the Honda CR-V. These are the cars that working families buy. These are not luxury items for the super rich. These are essential tools for life in a society that has failed to provide adequate public transportation. By raising the price of these vehicles by 25%, the government is effectively imposing a massive regressive tax on the American people. And at the same time, they are threatening the jobs of the very workers who build these cars. It is a double bind. It is a trap. And it exposes the lie at the heart of right-wing populism. They tell you they are fighting for you, but their policies always end up hurting you. They wrap themselves in the flag while they pick your pocket. We also have to consider the response from Canada. Did anyone in the White House seriously think that Canada would just sit back and take this? Did they think that a sovereign nation would allow its most important industry to be destroyed without a fight? Of course not. Retaliation is coming, and this is where the logic of the trade war leads us into a downward spiral. Canada will impose tariffs on American goods. American exports will suffer. American workers in other industries, agriculture, steel, aluminum, will lose their jobs as the Canadian market closes to them. It is a cycle of destruction. It is a race to the bottom. And for what? To what end? To prop up a failing narrative of American industrial dominance that no longer exists? To score political points in a domestic election cycle? It is madness. Pure economic madness. The supply chain freeze is perhaps the most immediate danger. You have to understand how modern manufacturing works. It is based on a principle called just-in-time production. This is a capitalist invention designed to eliminate the cost of warehousing. They do not keep inventory. They rely on parts arriving exactly when they are needed. It is a system designed to squeeze every last drop of efficiency out of the process to maximize profit by minimizing overhead. But it is a system with zero resilience. It has no buffer. When you introduce a shock like a 25% tariff, the whole thing collapses. Engines from Canada do not arrive in Kentucky. The Kentucky plant shuts down. 8,000 American workers are sent home. This is not a theoretical possibility. This is happening right now. The very mechanism that capitalism created to maximize profit has become the mechanism of its own destruction. The efficiency they bragged about has turned into a choke point. And let us not forget the timing of this. We are living in a period of profound economic instability. Inflation has ravaged the purchasing power of the working class. Wages have stagnated for decades while productivity has soared. And now, into this fragile mix comes a policy guaranteed to raise prices and cause unemployment. It is like throwing gasoline on a fire. The dealer panic we are seeing, the rush to buy cars before prices go up, the confusion in the marketplace, this is all symptomatic of a system that cannot provide stability for its people. A rational economic system would plan production to meet human needs. It would organize trade for mutual benefit. It would not allow the whim of a leader or the fluctuations of a market to determine whether or not people can eat. But we do not live in a rational system. We live in capitalism. And capitalism is proving once again that it is incapable of managing the productive forces of society in a way that benefits the majority. We must deepen our understanding of this catastrophe because the surface level explanations provided by the mainstream press are simply inadequate. They tell you about trade deficits and national security, but they ignore the fundamental contradictions of the capitalist mode of production that make such crises inevitable. What we are witnessing with these tariffs on Canadian autos is not an aberration. It is not a mistake in an otherwise rational system. It is a symptom of a system in decline, a system flailing about as it attempts to resolve its own internal crises by exporting misery to its neighbors and ultimately to its own working class. Let us look at the specific mechanisms of this disaster. Consider the second immediate consequence, the freeze of the supply chain. In the capitalist drive for efficiency, they have constructed a system called just-in-time manufacturing. This is celebrated in business schools as the pinnacle of modern management. They teach you that inventory is waste. They teach you that storing parts costs money that does not generate profit. So they eliminate the warehouses, they eliminate the buffer stocks. They create a system where a seat or a transmission arrives at the assembly line mere hours before it is installed in a car. It is a system balanced on a razor's edge, designed solely to squeeze the last drop of surplus value out of the process. And what happens when you disrupt that fragile equilibrium with a 25% tariff? The entire structure collapses. The parts stop moving. The engines from Canada do not arrive at the Ford plant in Kentucky. And because there is no inventory, because capitalism has eliminated the resilience in the system for the sake of short-term profit, the production line stops. And when the line stops, the worker is sent home. The 8,000 workers in Kentucky are not responsible for trade policy. They did not vote to disrupt the supply chain, but they are the ones who pay the price. They lose their wages. They face uncertainty. They are treated as disposable inputs in a machine that has malfunctioned. This is the irrationality of the market. It prioritizes the profit of the few over the security of the many, and it leaves the entire economy vulnerable to shocks that could easily be weathered by a rational planned system. Now let us talk about the dealer and consumer panic, because this is where the psychological violence of capitalism becomes most apparent. We are seeing a rush to buy cars before prices go up. We are seeing confusion and fear. People are scrambling to secure transportation, which in most of North America is a necessity for survival because we have allowed the public transport infrastructure to decay in favor of private automobile ownership. This panic is not accidental. It is the result of a system that uses price signals to allocate goods rather than distributing them according to need. When you announce a tariff, you create artificial scarcity. You tell people that if they do not act now, they will be priced out of the market. You induce anxiety. You force people to make desperate financial decisions. And who benefits from this panic? The dealerships that can mark up their existing inventory, the lenders who can trap desperate buyers into high interest loans, the speculators who profit from volatility. It is a transfer of wealth from the working class who need cars to get to work to the owning class who control the supply. The luxury car buyer, the person looking at a Lexus or a Lincoln, can afford to wait. They have options, they have capital. But the family looking for a Honda CR-V or a Toyota RAV4, the working family living paycheck to paycheck, they are the ones who are hurt. A 25% price increase prices them out of the market entirely. It forces them to buy older, less reliable cars. It pushes them further into debt. It is a class war waged through the mechanism of prices. But the devastation does not stop at the border. We must look at the retaliation from Canada. The United States exports $50 billion in vehicles and parts to Canada every year. That market has just become 25% more expensive for American companies. And what will happen to the American workers who build those cars for export? They will face the same fate as their Canadian counterparts: production cuts, layoffs, plant closures. The logic of protectionism is a lie. It claims to protect domestic jobs, but in a globally integrated economy, it destroys them just as surely as free trade does. Whether the border is open or closed, the worker loses because the decisions are made by capital, not by labor. And Canada will not stop at autos. They will target agriculture. They will target steel. They will target the very sectors that are supposed to be the base of support for this administration. They will do this to maximize political pressure. They will do this because in the logic of capitalist competition, you must hurt your opponent to survive. It is a zero-sum game. And in this game, the pawns are the farmers in the Midwest, the steel workers in Pennsylvania, the consumers across the country who will see prices rise for everything from food to appliances. This is not national security. This is national self-destruction. Now we come to the truly terrifying possibility, the energy retaliation. Canada supplies 60% of U.S. crude oil imports, 4 million barrels per day. They supply electricity to the northern states. They supply natural gas. In a rational world, energy would be a shared resource managed for the common good. But in our world, energy is a commodity. It is a weapon. And if Canada is backed into a corner, if their economy is threatened with collapse, they may feel they have no choice but to use that weapon. They could restrict exports. They could prioritize their own domestic needs, and the result would be catastrophic for the American working class. Imagine gasoline prices spiking to $5 or $6 a gallon. Imagine heating bills doubling in the middle of winter. Imagine brownouts in New York or Michigan because the grid cannot handle the demand without Canadian power. Who pays for this? The wealthy can absorb higher energy costs. The corporations can pass them on to consumers. But the worker, the retiree on a fixed income, the single parent trying to keep the lights on, they will be crushed. They will be forced to choose between heating their homes and feeding their families. This is the brutality of a system that allows essential resources to be used as bargaining chips in a trade war. It is a crime against humanity disguised as economic policy. And let us consider the strategic diversification option. Canada is already talking to the European Union, to Japan, to South Korea, and yes, to China. They are looking for alternative markets. They are looking for new partners. And in their desperation, they may open the door to Chinese electric vehicle manufacturers. Think about the irony of this. The tariffs were supposedly meant to protect American industry from competition. But by shutting Canada out of the US market, the administration is practically inviting Chinese companies to set up shop in Ontario. BYD and others could gain a foothold in North America. They could build plants in Canada and access the market through the back door. The result would be the exact opposite of what was intended. Instead of protecting American jobs, the tariffs would accelerate the decline of the American auto industry by exposing it to even fiercer competition. It would demonstrate once again the short-sightedness of capitalist planning, which looks only at the immediate quarterly result or the next election cycle and ignores the long-term consequences. It is a failure of vision, a failure of leadership, and a failure of the system itself. We also have to talk about what 500,000 lost jobs actually means. We throw these numbers around, but we must pause to understand the human reality. In Ontario, the auto sector employs 125,000 people directly. But for every one of those jobs, there are 7 to 10 indirect jobs in the local economy. The restaurant worker who serves lunch to the auto worker, the retail clerk who sells them clothes, the real estate agent who sells them a house. When the auto plant closes, the restaurant closes, the store closes, the housing market collapses, entire communities are hollowed out. We have seen this before. We saw it in the Rust Belt in the 1980s. We saw it in the deindustrialization of the West, and now we are seeing it again, inflicted by policy rather than by market forces alone. This is the social murder that Engels talked about. It is not a violent crime in the legal sense. No one is pulling a trigger, but the result is the same. Lives are shortened. Health is destroyed, communities are shattered, and it is all done legally. It is all done according to the rules of the game. The executive order is signed, the tariff is collected, the layoff notice is issued, everything is orderly, everything is bureaucratic, and yet the devastation is as real as a bombing raid. It is the violence of the status quo. And why is this happening now? We must ask that question. Why this sudden escalation? It is because global capitalism is in a crisis of profitability. The easy growth of the past is gone. The markets are saturated. The competition is intensifying. And when capitalists can no longer grow the pie, they start fighting over the slices. They turn on each other. They use the state to protect their own interests at the expense of their rivals. This is what imperialism looks like in the 21st century. It is not always about gunboats and colonies. Sometimes it is about tariffs and sanctions and trade barriers. But the goal is the same: to secure a monopoly position, to extract super profits, to exploit labor without interference. But this strategy is doomed to fail. You cannot solve the crisis of capitalism with more capitalism. You cannot solve the problem of overproduction and underconsumption by restricting trade and raising prices. You are only moving the crisis around. You are shifting the burden from one group of workers to another. You are delaying the inevitable reckoning. And in the process, you are causing immense suffering. You are radicalizing the working class. You are showing them that the system does not work for them, that it cannot provide stability, that it cannot provide security, that it is an enemy to be fought, not a benefactor to be thanked. The auto industry is a microcosm of the global economy. It is highly integrated, highly technical, and highly dependent on the smooth flow of goods and capital. When you disrupt it, you reveal the fragility of the whole edifice. You show that the prosperity we are told is permanent is actually contingent on 1,000 factors that can be upended in an instant. You show that the masters of the universe, the captains of industry, the political leaders are not in control. They are riding a tiger they cannot tame. They are unleashing forces they do not understand. And we are the ones who get trampled. We need to be clear about the alternative. The alternative is not better trade deals. It is not smarter tariffs. It is not a return to some mythical golden age of national manufacturing. The alternative is a system where production is planned for human need, not for private profit. A system where the workers who build the cars decide how to distribute them. A system where borders do not determine your standard of living. A system where cooperation replaces competition. A system where the economy serves society rather than society serving the economy. We need socialism. We need economic democracy. We need to take the power out of the hands of the erratic leaders and the greedy corporations and put it into the hands of the people who do the work. Because until we do that, we will be trapped in this cycle. We will be victims of the next trade war, the next financial crash, the next sudden shift in policy. We will be the collateral damage in their battles for dominance. We will be the ones wondering if we have a job tomorrow while they speculate on the price of our labor. It is not enough to complain. It is not enough to analyze. We must organize. We must understand that our interests are fundamentally opposed to theirs, and we must build a movement capable of challenging their power. We are standing at a precipice. The decision to impose these tariffs is not a sign of strength. It is a sign of weakness. It is the lash of a dying system flailing against its own limitations. They will tell you it is necessary. They will tell you it is patriotic. Do not believe them. Look at the reality. Look at the prices at the dealership. Look at the closed factories. Look at the fear in the eyes of your neighbors. That is the reality of their system, and it is up to us to build a better one. We must organize not just in our unions, but in our communities. We must demand not just better trade deals, but a seat at the table where the decisions are made. We must recognize that our struggle is international. The worker in Canada is our ally, not our enemy. The worker in Mexico is our brother, not our rival. We are all victims of the same anarchy of production, and we will only win if we stand together against the class that exploits us all. This is Richard Wolff. Thank you for listening. And as always, I look forward to speaking with you again about the urgent need to transform our economic system before it destroys us.